What's up, everybody? Corey Singleton here with the Citadel. I'm going to start that over. That's just, I don't know if I haven't done.
Are you good to go?
I just try that again. I may not be. What's up, everybody? Corey Singletary with the Citizens Utility Board with another episode of CUB Tracks. And alongside me, as usual.
Hi, everybody. Tom Content, Citizens Utility Board.
So we're back, and I'm hoping that the weather in Wisconsin stays warm and doesn't snow again. But you know, it's always hit or miss this time of year. So a few things we wanted to run down today. So disconnection moratorium ending, some new focus incentives, a new tool from Alliant Energy to help folks get on the right rate. Commission decision on some money coming from the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA. And then we wanted to circle back to an event that happened in Madison. It would have been about a week and a half ago now for the Customers First Coalition talking about nuclear. But
that's right.
Maybe right off the top we can start with just we've put it out in a few other places, but as a reminder to folks, the Wisconsin disconnection moratorium, the winter disconnection moratorium, ended on April 15th. So the utilities can now initiate collection and disconnection procedures. So if you are behind on your bill, if you've had difficulty paying your utility bill, we urge you, please reach out to your utility, see about getting on a deferred payment agreement, see about getting on a payment plan. Also, depending on your utilities, see if they have any type of forgiveness program that you might qualify for. Most of those are income qualified, but you the worst they can say is no. So make certain to ask if they have a program available. And we put up a blog post on our website. So go to cubwi.org/blog and look for a post about the disconnection moratorium ending. And we've got a bunch of resources there for energy assistance, water bill assistance, focus on energy assistance, weatherization, and some good sort of initial steps to take or things to look into if you've been having difficulty paying your utility bill. But the big one definitely right off the top is if you've been having difficulty, call your utility right away. And we've got the numbers for the 5 largest investor-owned utilities as well as Superior Water, Light, and Power up there. So make certain to get whatever help that you need to make certain your utility service stays on. That's right,
and there is plenty of federal money available for those who are income qualified. Far more people in Wisconsin actually are eligible to receive energy assistance than actually apply. But we have links from the CUB blog right on our website to the information about those programs as well as other programs that are available. So
yeah, absolutely. Take advantage of those programs. If you've never, if you're someone maybe for the first time, or maybe this is something that you have a challenge with regularly, make certain to reach out and see if you can qualify for any of those utility bill assistance programs. Because that's a real big one, Tom. Is there are a lot more people who are eligible for these programs that then take advantage of them and benefit from them. And a lot of it, I think, is awareness. And admittedly, there's an application process that takes a little bit of work. But I think getting out the awareness and increasing awareness of these programs is the first step. You had mentioned to me that Focus on Energy. Speaking of Focus on Energy has some new incentives that you want to...
Yeah, so Focus actually has just put out... They have a bunch of tips, Earth Month tips on how to green your home, but they actually have some monetary savings available right now through their Focus on Energy Marketplace, which is focusonenergymarketplace.com, and they're offering $70 discounts right now on smart thermostats, and so various smart thermostats are available through that offering, but it's as low as $50 for a smart thermostat. And it goes up from there, but all the ones that are available right now have a $70 discount. So it's a good time if you haven't gone that route to check that out.
Yeah, having a programmable thermostat is sort of classic energy efficiency and conservation recommendation and step. And certainly these days with folks being really familiar with working things through an app or really customizable user experience, smart thermostats are great. We have one in our house. And the one thing that people may not be aware of, depending on your utility. If you install a smart thermostat, you may also be eligible for a smart thermostat program through your utility, which might provide you additional opportunities for some credits or some gift cards to enroll in a program that not only might save you a little bit of money and maybe get you a little perk, some cash in your pocket or a gift card or something like that, but also helps keep utility costs overall under control. So not only can you save money, make your house a little bit more comfortable with a smart thermostat, but also, you might be able to participate in some additional programs.
Good stuff.
All right. And then maybe keeping with the theme of utility bills and trying to save on your utility bills.
It's always a good theme.
Yeah, I know you and we've been talking with utilities the last few years about ways we can work with the utility and things the utilities can do to try to get folks on the right rate so that they can save money.
Do more for customers by getting them on the right rate. And if you get everybody on the right rate, that means savings for customers and savings overall, right?
In most cases, one thing that people may not be aware of, so maybe backing up, the big thing that we're talking about for residential customers and small business customers is the availability of optional time of use rates or time varying rates. So all Wisconsin public utilities, so those are the investor-owned utilities and the municipal utilities, have available to residential customers a time of use rate. If you're old enough, and I'm dating myself a little bit here too, if you're old enough to remember nights and weekends plans for cell phones, it's kind of like that. And it gives you an opportunity to save on your electricity usage during off-peak times, as well as give you an opportunity to maybe shift some of your load to your usage to times when it's a little less expensive. So maybe run that washing machine before you go to bed, the dishwasher before you go to bed instead of in the middle of the day or in the middle of the evening. And like I said,
let the laundry pile up till the weekend.
That's an option.
Because the weekend rate is all the whole weekend long. So nights and weekends.
Absolutely. Weekend rates are usually less expensive. But one thing that our counterparts from one of our Wisconsin utilities, Alliant Energy, told us about a week or so ago is that they just went live with a brand new bill comparison tool, particularly looking at nights and weekends and their time varying rates, and that was Alliant Energy. So you're not an Alliant customer, so I know
I've got it up on my screen, but I can't see all the stuff you can see. So.
Yeah. So for any Alliant customers, it's a brand new tool. If you go to alliantenergy.com and go to ways to save, and then it's you got to drill down a little bit. So alliantenergy.com, if you've never been to the website for Alliant before, go there. And if you're a Wisconsin customer, select Wisconsin. And then go to Ways to Save. And then under Savings Program, they have their Nights and Weekends program. If you click on that, there's a big button right on top. It says Find Your Best Nights and Weekends Rate. And if you enter your Alliant account number and the last 4 digits of your Social Security number, it'll take you to a page, a dashboard that'll show you what you would have paid or what you did pay last year, estimated. I believe what this is supposed to be doing is looking at your actual historic consumption and saying this is approximately what you paid on your current rate. This is what you would pay under some different options. And I'll throw up a screenshot for folks that are watching on YouTube. And I'll throw the same screenshot up. We can throw the same screenshot up in the show notes for folks that are listening. But it'll tell you, if you switch to, say, the nights and weekends, that time of use rate, you might be able to save some money. My wife and I were already on Alliance nights and weekends rate, but the site is telling me that if we were to switch to their peak nights and weekends, which is the residential demand rate, we could save a little bit more per year, about $53 extra savings per year. It's a nice night out or nice. Well, these days that's just lunch at Culver's, but that's definitely a tool if you're an Alliant customer.
That's a lot of custard.
Leo really likes custard, so
just clarifying.
4-year-old eats a lot of Culver's. So yeah, if you're an Alliant customer, definitely check that out. And like I said, it's on alliantenergy.com. Under ways to save, go to the savings programs and nights and weekends. So what do you think about that? Do you think that's something that more utilities should do?
Definitely. I mean, I think not. We've been trying to, in public presentations, I always say, check to see if you might be able to save if you're on a time of use rates. But here's something where they've already got your energy history, your usage built into this tool, and they're calculating it for you with just a few keystrokes. Everybody should be doing this. So.
Yeah, and one extra little thing that I know that we've spoken with our utilities about is they also have a button under the different rate options. And I haven't clicked on any of them because we're pretty happy with the rate plan we're on right now. But our understanding is that if you wanted to switch the rate, really all you have to do is click on the button that says select this plan, probably walk through a few extra steps to confirm it, and then you're switched.
Right. You don't have to even go through a customer service call, and you could just get it done right then and there.
Yeah. So it's a little hidden. We could probably work on it being in a little bit better place for Alliant. But yeah, I agree with you. This is something that more utilities should do, and bring customer-facing customer service for utilities up to the 21st century.
It's good to see. Great to see.
Yeah. So yeah, that's cool, and we'll definitely update folks if we hear from other utilities about other new tools for customers
Definitely.
that folks can take advantage of. And then one, I don't know, might be kind of interesting for folks, mostly so that they kind of know who to be on the lookout for and maybe who to go to in the future. The commission on, what was it, April 14th, made a decision, April 13th, excuse me, made a decision about who would be the implementer of the Inflation Reduction Act funded home energy rebates programs, the HOMES program, and I'm just going to call it the HERA program, HEERA. These are two programs funded under the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, that would potentially bring around $150 million of incentive money or funding for incentives for home energy refits, energy efficiency measures, and a lot of it targeted towards low energy customers. And the commission decided that those would be implemented by the same entity that administers the Focus on Energy program, really trying to piggyback on the infrastructure and the tools that we already have in place because of Focus on Energy.
Which is great because it ends up being more of a one-stop shop with Focus already having experience with rebates, incentives, and a network of contractors that are Focus contractors, trade allies that can help implement. They're already there to implement rebates and incentives. Just doesn't make sense to kind of reinvent the wheel with a whole new state entity doing this. So it's a good move.
Yeah, if the other natural fit would have been sort of Department of Administration, State Energy Office, and they have other programs. They have the Low Income Weatherization Program that they oversee, but they don't have the sort of statewide energy efficiency measure administration mechanism to make it go. I feel like this is also just kind of an opportunity to point out that this is really a product of the fact that we have such a great energy efficiency program in Wisconsin with Focus on Energy, that we have the system in place that we can kind of plug in this federal funding.
Focus has been around for 20 years. It's won recognition for being the most cost effective of these types of programs in the country, and it's good to see that they're turning to Focus. The challenge is hurry up and wait on some of these things, on the incentives. On some of these incentives, there's $150 million that Corey mentioned, but for people who are interested in taking steps with energy efficiency or electric vehicles, for instance, there are tax credits now that you don't have to wait for. Some of the programs will take a while to flow out, and we'll keep everybody updated on when that actually happens. But the tax credits are available right away. So if you wanted to get an energy audit, there's a tax credit for that. If you want to do more insulation, there's actually tax credits. So there's a home tax credits of up to $3,000 or $3,200 right now that people can take advantage of, even if we have to wait a little longer to see the actual new rebate programs get developed. So that's good to see as well, and people should think about that as well.
Yeah. And then I guess one quick note on the sort of rubber meets the road end of this. The HER, the Home Energy Rebate programs, the Homes and Hero programs will be implemented by APTIM, but they will be separate from Focus on Energy. So you wouldn't want to, if you wanted to take advantage of some of these federal programs, you wouldn't want to go to, reach out to Focus directly, but you may see there may be opportunities for folks that are participating in Focus to maybe hear about these programs and take advantage of it, and vice versa. So there are some opportunities for synergy, but I did want to throw that out there that if you see in the news that Wisconsin was awarded all of this Inflation Reduction Act money for these incentives for efficiency, don't call the Focus on Energy line. We'll update folks when the implementation information comes out, but that'll be coming down the road over the next several months. So stay tuned for that. So that kind of runs down like the big update stuff that we had. So you had mentioned folks might have an interest in the conversation that we had down in Madison at the Customers First Coalition Power Breakfast. There was a broad array of stakeholders and members of the public that attended. And the topic of the day was nuclear energy.
I know, we're back to talking about nuclear again. It's been a while, and it's been a while since anybody's been talking about it. I mean, obviously, the folks at the University of Wisconsin-Madison who study nuclear power and have a small research reactor, they've been focused on it all the way through. And Paul Wilson was on the panel, but it was a good panel discussion of what could be coming. Right now, there's discussion of what are called small modular reactors and kind of next generation from the large reactors that we've seen built in Georgia, and end up not getting built in a couple other states because the costs were just so high. And we're waiting to see what happens with this technology. Dairyland Power has a memorandum of understanding with NuScale, which is a developer of the small modular technology, but it's not ripe. It's not commercial yet. There was actually a speaker from the Department of Energy talking about the gateway toward liftoff toward commercialization. So it's not commercially ready yet, but it's back in the discussion for the first time in a while.
Yeah, I mean, maybe backing up. I mean, the reason that we're really talking about this is, I guess, twofold. One is, the strong interest in decarbonization, or actually threefold, I should say, depending on how you look at it. But the big driving force is the interest in decarbonization of our electricity supply, not only from folks, who are interested in that as an issue specifically, but also our utilities. There are costs associated with continuing to operating fossil fuel plants. There are fuel risks associated with, all the fluctuating commodity costs we saw this past year and inflation with natural gas and war in Ukraine and all that type of thing. And then the technology that you've mentioned. So not only are there new nuclear technologies that folks are exploring that maybe are smaller, maybe easier to deploy, maybe a little less expensive to deploy because it's a little more off the shelf. But that technology change in the nuclear side, coupled with the technological evolution we've seen over the past decade of our transition to renewables and wind and particularly solar and storage these days, really becoming a major player. And a lot of folks have been saying that nuclear is sort of the natural fit alongside all of these new renewable resources to make certain we have the reliability and the low-cost energy that we need to keep the lights on.
Exactly, and that's one of the big question marks is how if there's a decarbonization target for these utilities to get to net zero by 2050, what role should nuclear, both existing and new nuclear, play in that? And one of the issues that didn't get a lot of traction during discussion at the Customers First Forum was just the waste issue and where how that gets resolved ultimately. Mm-hmm. Since we don't have Yucca Mountain, that's the Yucca Mountain proposal as a one site to store all the spent nuclear fuel died years ago. But the DOE speaker did mention that they are looking at a plan to have interim centralized sites because right now the spent fuel is being stored in 92 places around the country at all the reactors where that were built early on. So, and we still have spent nuclear fuel at 3 sites in Wisconsin, at Kewaunee and Point Beach, and at the Genoa site for Dairyland.
Yeah, I mean, spent waste is a challenge. I mean, it's always the interesting thing to me. So I have a background, a degree in biology, and I often approach things more from a science/engineering sort of perspective. And the thing that's going to be interesting to me about nuclear power coming back into the discussion for American utilities and American power supply is the degree to which we as a society are going to be able to have a maybe not dispassionate conversation, but a slightly less emotionally charged conversation about nuclear power, because it's all about trade-offs, right? You know, you mentioned nuclear waste storage, which is absolutely a challenge. Some of that's related to, you know, our nuclear fuel cycle. But if you think the counterpoint to that is, I think I looked it up last week, the volume of spent nuclear fuel in the United States to date, if you took a football field and I think you filled it like a meter high or something like that across the entire football field, that is the entirety of all of the nuclear waste, the spent nuclear fuel from nuclear power in the United States. If you compare that to all of the train car loads of coal that's burned every single day, as well as the emissions from traditional fossil, right? It's about balance. And so there's going to be 2 parts to the conversation. There's going to be the environmental and, sort of more sciencey part of that discussion, which gets into environmental impacts. But then the other big one that you had mentioned that we typically get involved with, which is the cost side.
Right.
And they talked the individual from the DOE. One of the things she was talking about is ways the DOE is looking at trying to get, this new wave of nuclear to manage those costs and not have costs spiral like they did, like, for example, in Georgia and really the last wave of nuclear power in the U.S.
Right, exactly. It was just over about 8 years ago 7 or 8 years ago when Wisconsin repealed the state moratorium on building new nuclear plants. And my predecessor, Kurt Runzler, then executive director, had put out a statement, not wanting to see the moratorium repealed, and the party was citing the cost, the economics. I mean, at the time, this plant that was under construction in Georgia had gone $3 billion over budget. It was supposed to be $14 billion, and it was up to $17 billion. And lo and behold, and today it's actually one of the reactors. It has started running now that we're in 2023, and the total cost is now $30 billion. So it's actually been that cost has actually doubled. So can economies of scale for nuclear ever achieve cost effectiveness is still a huge question.
It is a huge question, and even with the newer technologies, people refer to as SMR or small modular reactors, which are really not new technology. It's just sort of a different way of doing the engineering and making the individual pieces smaller and, as the name implies, modular, to make it so that when you build an SMR nuclear power plant, you're not starting from a clean sheet, because that's one of the biggest things that drives up the cost. For example, you'd mentioned the plant in Georgia, and really pretty much every single nuclear power plant in the United States is unique. The engineering, the design, the cooling, the footprint, everything about the plant is unique, and the uniqueness drives up the cost because you can't really build off of previous, experience from the last plant that was built. Whereas if you have nuclear power where, one of the designs or the concepts is really a self-contained sealed nuclear reactor unit, and then you use all the fuel up, and then you essentially unplug it like a battery, take it away, put a new one in, drop a new one in, and then all of that refueling and waste processing can be handled, in a centralized way. And if you do that, then potentially the costs come down. But really, you're right. The big thing that we would have to look out for from a consumer advocate perspective is I don't think that we would, in Wisconsin, want to be on the bleeding edge of this necessarily.
Exactly. We don't want to be headlong going straight towards something that we don't know where the technology hasn't been proven elsewhere. You saw the experience that happened in South Carolina and Florida, where they ended up abandoning projects after they saw because of the cost, and the Southern Company in Georgia kept moving forward with its plant, the $30 billion plant, but even the costs that were already spent in trying to get those things permitted ended up getting billed back to customers. And our consumer advocate colleagues down in Florida they went to bat to refinance those costs in a process called securitization, which we've talked about before about our coal plants here in Wisconsin. But that they refinanced that, and it saved customers down there $600 million, so that the utilities couldn't just profit on an abandoned project, right? But there were that's kind of the symbol of bleeding edge, the bleeding edge problem. The fact that customers ended up being billed for so much money just for plants that never got built.
Yeah, and the sort of bleeding edge challenge for those plants was the old school of thought for economies of scale, and this was talked about at the customer's first breakfast. Was basically the old school of thought was you achieved economies of scale by building bigger and bigger nuclear power plants. And it's just gotten to the point where that strategy doesn't work because the cost becomes so large that any one utility can really take on that cost burden without significant risk to the customers.
No, and you'd expect that it would be more like consortiums of companies that would end up doing this proposing this once it gets to the level that it is proposed. And it also brings up the question of, as it was kind of brought up during the session, but what is baseload power, right? What does round-the-clock power look like in 2035 or 2040, in a world where we have likely a lot more solar, because solar is already cost-effective today, one of the most cost-effective technologies around today. And if you can back that up with batteries and longer duration batteries, that's going to be one of the key competing technologies that the PSC, the utilities, and the CUB at that time, whenever this happens, will have to look at is what's the most cost-effective and reasonable option for customers.
And some of it, I think, is related to public policy decisions that are gonna hopefully have to be made, in state houses, downtown Madison, the legislature, and in state houses around the country. Is, what's the goal? Are we trying to shoot for 100%? No fossil fuels, no carbon emitting generation. Are we trying to get that down to 80% reductions from where we are? Because if you have a universe where you're willing to continue to operate select fossil plants like newer natural gas plants that might be cleaner and emit fewer carbon emissions and other environmental pollutants, maybe the absolute need to push to something that is non-greenhouse gas emitting and generally pretty clean like nuclear, but very expensive and higher risk from a cost perspective, is nuclear. Maybe that's that trade-off, right? In terms of how you plan for your future. What we don't have in this country is we don't have a national policy on that. We don't have a good sense for what the goal is, and so everyone's kind of grasping in the dark of like, well, we could go one way, we could go another way, and if we go a particular direction for a future, then we may need to look really heavily into nuclear, versus if it's maybe not as deep a decarbonization, still probably fairly aggressive, but if it's possible to leave some clean fossil on the table, then maybe the drive towards nuclear isn't quite as critical.
It's one of those things where I think it gets back to one of the challenges we see in developing and how the utility portfolio is unfolding, which is the need for everybody to be able to see the big picture. When the utilities all have resource plans that they put together in terms of, here's the mix that we see that we're going to need over the next, say, 5 to 10 years. And many states actually have requirements where you have to get those resource plans filed and approved, and input from consumer advocates, input from the public, input from other stakeholder groups, and approval by the PSC. We don't have that in Wisconsin, and I think given the cost environment that we've seen, with the cost pressures we're already seeing, with our rates already being among the highest in the Midwest, that's a tool that I think the Public Service Commission needs to be given to as they're starting to explore, getting ready to explore these technologies.
Yeah, I mean, planning is a huge one. We've talked about integrated resource planning before,
Yep.
But a big one, particularly when you're looking at situations where, as we've advocated for, sort of a look at all the alternatives. Let's not take anything off the board in terms of pathways forward. Is really trying to find ways to let competition and competitive bidding also try to help you out and save some money, save the customers some money. And not only, you should have a coherent, cohesive, transparent planning process, but when it comes time to build something, we love the free market in this country, so we should probably, if ideally, take advantage of competitive bidding and competitive procurement to help us find the ultimate final projects.
Yeah, more tools in the toolbox to save money is what that is. If we can get more competitive bidding, that'd be great step forward.
Yeah, so at CUB, at least at present, we're not opposed to nuclear on principle. Like you've mentioned, we do tend to advocate for the approach of not taking away tools. In terms of the planners, let's not take away tools from the regulators or the consumers. But at the same time, it's got to prove itself from a cost perspective, and at least where we sit today, I'm certainly not going to be up there jumping up and down if a utility tomorrow decides to announce that they're gonna go all in on a new nuclear facility without some strong evidence that it's not going to burn Wisconsin customers later on cost.
Yeah, no, the pocketbook issue. It comes right back to the pocketbook and how much at the time it's commercial. Not only obviously is it needed, but is it cost effective? And it's way too early to say. But the experience of the cost increases we're seeing right now every year for the Point Beach plant, which is one of the older generation reactors, the experience in Georgia, even there have been headlines that the SMR technology is coming in at a higher cost than initially hoped for. Color me skeptical, but we'll see. We'll see how that there's a big. The world's changing rapidly, and will long duration batteries, be competitive and be reliable and do everything they're hoped for? That's another question. And then last year we just had the huge announcement on breakthroughs on nuclear fusion, which the fusion researchers have been trying to had been waiting for, and we'd love to see more advancement there. It's an interesting technological race right now, but the consumer advocate's got to be watching out for that pocketbook.
Yeah, for those who are interested and maybe want to spectate on this in Wisconsin, like you'd mentioned, Darylin Power Cooperative, is that what it is?
Yes.
The co-ops in the western part of the state, they have an MOU to explore small modular nuclear with NuScale, and I was going to say NextEra. That's definitely not the right company. With NuScale, so it's not firm that they're going to build something, but they're definitely aggressively pursuing that. And so maybe that's something we can keep an eye out for, see how that experience goes for the co-ops if they decide to go down that path. And who knows? Maybe there will be an explosion in interest, and there'll be, the order book for NuScale and these other companies will be through the roof, and we can drive the cost down just like we drove the cost down for solar and storage and everything else. And then we can sit down and have those conversations about what's the right fit for Wisconsin, for our resources and our electricity going forward.
And if people want to check out the full discussion, it was recorded by Wisconsin Eye, so it's available on the Wisconsin Eye website. And the Customer Service Coalition is going to include some excerpts from that whole conversation on its next podcast for the month of April, the Electric Wire podcast. So more resources to dive deeper if people want to.
Yeah. So an interesting topic. We'll obviously stay on top of that. Mercifully, we're not having to face that issue right now. It's just sort of base building for everyone. Make certain everyone kind of understands what could happen in the future and what paths are available. Yeah,
you mentioned your entry point was your science background. My entry point was my journalism background and writing all these stories at times over the last 25 years. I'm getting older. Talking about the nuclear renaissance is imminent, and I remember writing a story about how many new plants were under construction in Asia and around the world, whereas none were at that time. Only one or two were in construction here, and just the whole challenge of sifting through the different debates on that as a reporter was a fascinating thing. But I didn't expect it to come back at this point, but as even the fact that it's part of the conversation again is interesting to me. That it just shows the rapid pace of change that we're seeing in this industry right now.
Cool. Well, anything you got to wrap up? I think
that was it.
All right. Cool. Thanks for everyone for following along. Make certain to like and subscribe and, share with your friends if you find this interesting or any of our other episodes. And make certain to follow along so you can stay up to date. We're getting into the rate case season. This is going to be a lot of exciting things coming up, and hopefully folks this is one more resource for folks to stay up to date on things that will affect their utility service.
And then check out the show notes for this one because we'll have a bunch of links on there.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll catch you in the next one.